At exactly 8:47 a.m., the calm Caribbean turned into a countdown to catastrophe. No warning, no declaration, just radar alarms screaming aboard one of America's most powerful aircraft carriers. Two unidentified surface contacts were racing in fast, and they weren't responding. This wasn't an exercise. This wasn't a misunderstanding. And what happened next nearly dragged two nations to the edge of war. As deck crews rushed to launch fighters, a thunderous impact ripped through steel. A shell fired deliberately. 4 sailors were down before anyone could say the word attack. Here's the terrifying truth most people don't understand about naval warfare. An aircraft carrier's greatest strength, its size, also makes it a perfect target. And while alarms echoed through the ship, the crew didn't yet know something far worse was closing in. Because these attackers weren't just firing guns. They were carrying weapons designed to kill giants. And in the next 60 seconds, one irreversible decision would change everything. The first damage report hit the bridge, and it was worse than anyone expected. The shell hadn't just scarred the hull. It punched in at an angle engineers dread. Below the flight deck, hydraulic pressure collapsed. One of the carrier's aircraft elevators froze. Stuck down. 12 fully armed Super Hornets were trapped in the hangar. Pilots ready, deck crews waiting, but no way to launch them. In naval warfare, seconds matter, and the carrier had just lost its ability to project power when it needed it most. As sailors fought flooding and sparks, another impact shook the ship. This one struck high, near sensors, radar, communications. That's when the captain made the call no carrier commander ever wants to make. An emergency message shot toward Washington. Coordinates, damage, enemy confirmed. But here's the detail that changes everything. The attackers weren't running. They were closing in. And intelligence would soon reveal they weren't hunting with guns anymore. They were preparing something far deadlier. The 2 Venezuelan vessels finally showed their profiles on radar. Small, fast, purpose-built for coastal aggression. These weren't random patrols. They were Guaycari-class missile boats, loaded for a kill. Each carried heavy naval guns, rapid-fire cannons. But that wasn't the real threat. Mounted amidships sat 4 Chinese-made anti-ship missiles per vessel. Z-skimming, radar-guided, built to punch through warships far larger than themselves. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is called asymmetric gamble. Small ships, massive weapons. One clean hit can cripple a carrier for years. The Venezuelan commander believed the carrier was isolated. He believed escorts were too far to matter. And he believed hesitation would mean failure. So he pushed closer, closer than any hostile ship had dared in decades. Back on the carrier, defenders watched the range shrink. Every mile closed increased the odds of catastrophe. And at 8:53, the order was given that turned aggression into suicide. Missile launch authorization. White smoke exploded from the launcher. The first missile screamed into the sky, then dropped low, hunting. In 3 seconds, it was faster than a jet on takeoff. Locked tracking, adjusting its path toward the carrier's heart. This is the nightmare scenario every carrier crew trains for. A sea-skimming missile gives you seconds, not minutes, to survive. Sensors screamed. The ship's automated defenses woke up instantly. A 6-barrel Gatling gun spun to life, faster than human eyes could follow. Tungsten rounds poured into the air, forming a solid wall of metal. The missile didn't slow. It didn't dodge. It flew straight into the storm. 800 yards out, the impossible happened. The missile disintegrated in a violent fireball, fragments crashing into the sea. Cheers didn't come because the radar showed something worse. Another launch signature, then another. 2 more missiles were lifting off simultaneously. And this time, the carrier wasn't the only ship preparing to fire back. While the carrier fought for its life, a shadow was racing in from the horizon. A guided missile cruiser, engines pushed to their absolute limit. The distress call had reached its combat center in under 90 seconds, and the response was immediate. This ship wasn't built to survive. It was built to end fights. Inside its vertical launch system sat over 100 missiles, each waiting for permission that just arrived. Fire control computers locked onto both attacking vessels at once. Speed, heading, sea state. Every variable calculated in milliseconds. The Venezuelan crews never saw the cruiser. Their focus was locked on the carrier, on the kill. But in modern naval warfare, you never see what destroys you. Two hatches burst open. Flame, smoke, shockwaves. Missiles dropped low, disappearing beneath the radar horizon. Z-skimming, silent, lethal. And as they raced toward their targets, one crew finally realized something was very wrong. They had seconds to react, and almost no chance to survive. The Venezuelan radar screens flickered, then bloomed, with a signal they didn't expect. Too low, too fast, too close. That's the terror of sea-skimming missiles. By the time you see them, they're already killing you. The lead patrol boat's commander shouted orders. Chaff, evasive turns, anything. But neglected systems failed to respond. Launchers jammed. Decoys stayed silent. On the horizon, two missiles rode just feet above the waves. Lower than radar was ever meant to track. Naval warfare scenario analysis calls this the dead zone, where defense becomes hope, and hope runs out quickly. At 12 miles, panic set in. At 6 miles, men abandoned posts. At 3 miles, there was no escaping physics. The first missile struck below the waterline, not with an explosion, but with penetration. For one long second, the ship stayed afloat. Then the sea rushed in. But the second patrol boat hadn't been hit yet, and its crew was watching everything happen in real time. Knowing the next impact was meant for them, 14 seconds felt like a lifetime. That's how long the second patrol boat had to understand its fate. They tried to turn. Too slow. They tried to accelerate. Too late. The missile came in from the blind side. Low, silent, unstoppable. No warning tone. No second chance. Impact tore through the superstructure like paper. Metal folded. Antennas vanished. The bridge ceased to exist in a single flash. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is called mission kill. But for the crew, it was final. Both Venezuelan vessels were now burning wrecks, one sinking fast, the other already breaking apart. From first missile launch to total destruction, less than 5 minutes. A decision meant to intimidate had erased 2 warships. Back near the carrier, defenders watched smoke rise on the horizon. The immediate threat was gone, but the battle wasn't over yet, because now came the most dangerous phase of any naval engagement. After the shooting stops, when politics takes over. Silence returned to the sea, but not relief. Every commander knew what came next would matter just as much as the fight. Debris floated where warships had existed minutes earlier, and in that debris, survivors. Rescue helicopters lifted off, even as weapon systems stayed hot. Because naval warfare doesn't end when the enemy sinks. Dozens of sailors were pulled from the water, some wounded, some exhausted, some staring in shock at where their ship had been. 18 never surfaced. The sea doesn't negotiate. Back aboard the carrier, damage control teams worked non-stop. Flooding contained. Fires out. The jammed elevator remained frozen, an expensive scar. Within hours, flight operations resumed. Not because the carrier was unhurt, but because carriers are built to absorb punishment and keep fighting. The message was unmistakable. The strike group was still operational, still lethal, and across the region, every navy was already studying what had just happened. Because this wasn't just an incident. It was a warning. Within minutes, satellites were repositioned, radars recalibrated, phones rang in capitals across the world. This wasn't just a clash at sea anymore. It was a geopolitical shockwave. From a naval warfare scenario analysis perspective, the lesson was brutal and clear. Modern carriers aren't lone giants. They are bait, guarded by a layered, invisible killing field. Venezuela's gamble wasn't tactical. It was psychological, an attempt to test resolve, deterrence, and reaction time. Instead, it exposed something far more dangerous. The speed at which modern naval combat ends. 20 minutes from first shot to silence. 5 minutes from missile launch to total loss. No dramatic chase. No prolonged battle. Just math, sensors, and precision. Back aboard the carrier, the captain's final report was transmitted. Mission intact. Strike group secure? But one question lingered across every command center. What if the missiles had launched 30 seconds earlier? Because in modern naval warfare, margins decide history. History will never record this as a war. There was no declaration, no campaign ribbon. But make no mistake, this was combat, and it rewrote assumptions overnight. 2 warships destroyed not by numbers, but by coordination, sensors, and restraint. The carrier survived because it wasn't alone, because escorts moved without hesitation, because doctrine mattered more than bravado. For Venezuela, the cost was irreversible. Ships lost, sailors gone. A message delivered with precision rather than words. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this engagement will be studied for decades. Not for its size, but for its speed. It proved something uncomfortable. Modern naval battles aren't heroic slogs. They're sudden, unforgiving, and final. One miscalculation, one order given too late, one enemy you never see. And minutes later, it's over. If you want more real-world breakdowns of how modern military power actually works, subscribe, stay sharp, and stay curious. Because the next confrontation might be even shorter.